Hi, I'm James Minick, and today we are going to talk about the 5 steps to reinstating your driver's license after a DWI revocation. So, 5 steps are: first of all, you got to determine your eligibility. Secondly, you got to request a DWI interview with the DMV hearing officer. Next, you have to request a DWI restoration hearing. Number 4, you want to prepare for your restoration hearing with your lawyer and witnesses. And finally, 5, you need to attend and give testimony at your DWI restoration hearing and ultimately have the hearing officer decide to reinstate your driver's license. So, to quickly run through those points, first of all, you need to determine your eligibility for license reinstatement. Typically, the easiest way to do this is to get a copy of your North Carolina driving record or motor vehicle report. That is what I call the answer key to everything as it relates to your license. It's all contained in that. It can be difficult to read and interpret, so you want to review that with a lawyer before applying for a hearing so that you're not wasting any time or money in applying for a hearing that you're not eligible to have. Secondly, you need to request a DWI interview. DWI restoration is a 2 hearing or 2-step process. The first hearing is called the DWI interview, and that basically is sitting down with the hearing officer. The hearing officer will ask you some questions and then give you a packet of information to fill out in order to then be eligible to apply for the actual restoration hearing. But at the DWI interview, typically the only person that is there besides you is the hearing officer. You don't need any witnesses at that interview. And generally speaking, when I've represented clients in the hearing restoration process, I have not attended the interview with them, but just the actual restoration hearing. Following that interview, you'll need to again fill out the packet of information that is given to you by the hearing officer and submit that back to the hearing officer. You'll also have to get a DWI substance abuse assessment and a FBI background check. Once you have submitted all that paperwork back into the hearing officer, you can then request the second hearing, or what is the actual real hearing, the driver's license restoration hearing following a DWI. So you'll send that in with the cost of the hearing, which is currently $425. After you've sent that in, the DMV will provide notice of your hearing date, your restoration hearing date. And at that restoration hearing, that's when the DMV hearing officer is going to hear testimony and decide whether or not to reinstate your driver's license. Therefore, step 4 is preparing for your DWI restoration hearing, and this is probably one of the most critical steps in the process. You want to have a meeting with your witnesses, and if you're represented by counsel, with your lawyer going into that hearing. An experienced DMV hearing lawyer can lay out what the procedure of the hearing looks like, what the order of testimony is going to be, what is needed in order to present the case to the hearing officer for reinstatement, and what questions would be anticipated from the hearing officer. Finally, you need to attend your restoration hearing with your witnesses, and obviously, again, if you have an attorney, with your attorney. Whether it comes to the interview or the actual restoration hearing, do not show up late. Be there early. You do not want to miss your hearing time. If you arrive late or you do not show up, you very likely will lose by default and have a pretty significant delay on your ability to re-request a restoration hearing. At the hearing, evidence is presented from you and your witnesses. If you have an attorney, the attorney can ask questions. The DMV hearing officer will ask questions of you and each of your witnesses. And then at the end of the hearing, if you have a lawyer, that lawyer can give a closing argument as to why your license should be reinstated. Then ultimately, the restoration hearing officer, the DMV hearing officer, will decide whether or not to reinstate your license. This is very much a character hearing, and there is great leeway that the hearing officer has in deciding whether or not to restore a person's driver's license. If your license is restored, there is typically going to be a number of conditions required as part of that restoration agreement. One of those being the requirement for an ignition interlock, which is for a period of years determined by what type of license revocation you were originally facing. So there's different lengths for a DWI license revocation, and depending on the length of the revocation, will guide how many years you're looking at an ignition interlock device being required as part of your conditional restoration agreement. We handle restoration hearings throughout North Carolina. If you have a question about your DMV, your eligibility for restoration hearing or the restoration hearing itself, please give us a call. We'd be happy to talk with you about your case. First of all, always sequester officers, probably on most cases, but certainly